Okay, once again, good morning or good afternoon. Again, depending on where you're signing in from this morning. Welcome to our latest webinar titled The Future of Talent Acquisition with special guests from Insperity, Michael Timms, and MSP 360's very own CEO, Brian Helwig. The world we know it has changed over the past years, and companies have had to adapt fairly rapidly to accommodate their new hybrid workforce. So we're going to address some of these tough topics today together with Insperity. So Michael, take it away.
All right, thank you, and good morning or afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I want to start off today and just talk a little bit about some things, the uncertainty about the future and how it's impacting us. There's a lot we don't know, and right now that uncertainty is raising a lot of questions and anxiety. So I'm going to start out, give you a couple of trends. Korn Ferry is a global organizational consulting firm that works with clients to design optimal organization structures, roles, and responsibilities. And they published a workforce trends survey at the beginning of 2022. And here's some of the things that they see from a work trend perspective that are happening. Reinvention, meaning the flip side of disruptive change. A lot of the business models out there are going to change if they haven't already. There will be more digital acceleration. Organizations will explore more flexible production methods that are tailored specifically to client and customer needs. Another thing that they're seeing is scarcity. And specifically when they talk about that, and it's surviving in the talent shortage. And we are seeing that from our perspective. We see it across the country. Certain industries are being hit more so than others, but there is a real concern about that and how we're going to address that moving forward. The other piece of it they label as vitality and employee well-being, and just how important that is. It's really taken center stage. A lot of organizations are putting more time and energy into it. It's one of the biggest concerns that CEOs have when those types of surveys are done. Sustainability is another piece. When we talk about that, we're really talking about three things: environmental, social, and governance, ESG. And it's a system for how to measure the sustainability of a company or the investment. And the investment really is socially responsible investing, ethical investing, sustainable investing, and impacting investing in more general terms. The other aspect, when we look at it from an employee perspective, is individuality. And the employee experience has become more personal. Employees want better work-life balance. They want less commuting. And what we're finding is that 36% of professionals say that they plan to take a different job in the near future because the pandemic allowed them to reevaluate what they need and what they want to change. And then another piece, which obviously became very heightened during the pandemic, was social justice. So inclusivity is another area where we're trying to really work to figure out not only diversifying our workforce, but inclusiveness in terms of everybody participating, being able to contribute to the success. And then finally, accountability. And so from an accountability perspective, we're talking about a couple of things. A lot of organizations are revisiting their key performance indicators. What are those things and what do they mean moving forward? But this goes all the way through the organization. Leadership has to respond to the demands of directing a more agile and fluid teams and thinking of responsibility, not only to the department and organization that they're in, but collectively, what it means to the whole business. And then from an individual perspective, employees will be given more opportunities to make their own decisions and find the best approach. And this is only going to work if individuals and teams have a shared purpose and understand how their decisions contribute to the organization's overall success. So I want to start out with a quick poll. And if you just want to put your responses in the chat, when we look at future work trends, what are raising questions in your organizations? So is it reinvention, scarcity of talent, employee well-being, sustainability, individuality or work-life balance, inclusivity, or accountability? So if you could just take a moment and put your responses in the chat. Okay, so we see some scarcity of talent, accountability, employee well-being. Okay. All right, so we're going to address some of these as we move going, more scarcity of talent. We're going to address some of these further as we move along. But we want to talk a little bit about the combination of things we see happening in terms of how we're going to work both as humans and machines moving forward. Is it going to be more what they refer to as a no-collar workforce, where workers accustomed to working with rigid processes are liberated by mechanical coworkers that not only automate entire processes, but augment how human workers perform in high-level tasks? So the culture is going to be, management has to recognize how we're going to collaborate, both from a creativity and a social contribution perspective in this area. One of the things that we see going on now is that skills that are decreasing are physical and manual, as well as basic cognitive skills. What they're being replaced with is emotional intelligence, higher cognitive skills, higher levels of thinking. And we see this going on in a couple of different areas. One example is in the banking industry, where robotic process and automation has come into play. And due to the rapidly increasing numbers of customers at one specific bank, they wanted to take and automate their entire bank account opening process. So between robotic processing automation and optical character recognition, it enabled the bank to register growth in the number of accounts opened per day from 3,000 to 15,000. This was a large bank in India. They were able to do it with the same workforce, and they were able to reduce processing time from 12 minutes to 3 minutes. But one of the things that they took away from that whole process was it enabled people to get out of the office and into the field, where they were meeting their potential clients at their workplaces and taking the process from there. Another thing that we see happening is in artificial intelligence. And this is happening whether it's a McDonald's or a Walmart. We see that there are reduced checkouts, and there's one person who's often troubleshooting 6 to 8 checkouts. And this is really what we're seeing happen in terms of shifting of skill sets. We need to have people who are better critical thinkers, who are able to make decisions in the moment, and they can resolve issues as they arise. So this mix of things that's happening is, when we look at this stuff, this is discussions that anybody in your HR function really should be involved in these, and figuring out how technology cannot just replace people, but rather repurpose them within the organization. It's about efficiency, and it's about taking the people cost to the bottom line of the P&L, where it's going to make a greater return on investment. The harsh reality is, as we're figuring out what higher skills are needed, robotic process automation and artificial intelligence can actually provide better and faster services. And we're finding that customers and clients alike are enjoying this mix. So the question then becomes, will small businesses have the same technology as large organizations? Or will we work in a world where small is more powerful? And technology does allow tiny businesses to tap into vast reservoirs of information, skills, and financing that were formerly available only to larger organizations. And that gives them power and a broader reach. We saw in the beginning of 2019, there were 4.4 million applications for new businesses, small business applications. In 2020, that went up to 5.4 million. So there's a lot of things out there where there's great opportunity to take advantage of things from a different perspective, specifically economies of scale. And we're seeing this a lot in what transpires in our world as a professional employer organization. We have a number of clients who now have, because of the talent scarcity, have looked across the country to find and bring in new help, and it's enabled them to work remotely. So what we've been able to do is help them get set up in states so that they're in alignment with any particular labor laws that are going on out there. A lot of times we find that when companies open up, even if people are working remotely, they have to be conscious of things from sick policies to also wage laws. In some instances, during the pandemic in New York, they had to come up with emergency plans in the event that the pandemic was going to end up spreading in their workspace. All these things were due to state-specific regulations that were passed, and we've been able to help our clients in that respect too. The other piece of it, from the talent perspective, they've been able to take advantage of the recruiting services that we offer and find talent using our recruiters. And that's helped immensely, because when they work with us, we were able to put something out on a job board, a posting for them, and it's actually spread across 10 job boards, and it gives us a broader context of people to come and bring back to the clients to assist them. So I want to stop there. I don't know, Brian, if you have anything you would like to add at this point.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk a little bit about, the feedback from the poll, right? The guys said, hey, what matters a lot to them is scarcity of talent, and then actually employee well-being and probably engagement. And so a lot of what, Insperity has to offer, and just so that everybody understands, we do use Insperity here at MSP 360. And when you're looking at scarcity of talent, one of the things that you are challenged with is, can I only hire within my specific geography, when at the same time you also have employee well-being kind of sitting in the back of your mind? So what's that mean? People usually like to work from home, right? If you guys take a look at my background, this is my home office. The majority of our employees here in the United States, in Pittsburgh and in Florida, are able to work and have a work-life home balance. With prices of gas skyrocketing, who wants to sit in a car for an hour and commute back and forth from Miami to West Palm, or up here in Mars, Pennsylvania, all the way down to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? So well-being, life balance, employee health, when you boil all that together and you're looking at scarcity of talent, one of the things that Insperity offers is the ability to hire pretty much anywhere in the country and be compliant. So rather than just having a labor pool that is maybe just in Boston or just in Florida or just in Pittsburgh, now you have a labor pool that's available for you pretty much in the United States. You don't have to work, if you're a small business or maybe an upper mid-market MSP, you don't have to worry about all of the other things you have to do, like filing wage reports in different states, being able to worry about workers' comp, or going through all those compliance pieces. With Insperity, you sign up, it's actually pretty cost effective. And once you're actually in and as a client of theirs, they handle the payroll process becomes easy, compliance process becomes easy, access to talent is now all from shore to shore. Having a tech in Texas when you have a customer that might be in Colorado, Central Time to Mountain Time, makes things easier. If you're going to expand and market your business inside the United States, and you're going to say, hey, we're not just going to be a Boston-based business anymore, we're going to look at New York, we're going to look at bringing customers on in Central Time Zone or Mountain Time Zone, it allows you to put technicians in the right place and be able to offer sort of a 24/7, for lack of better words, or at least a 24/5 look and feel and serviceability. Talent can be anywhere, right? Today, especially today. And when it comes to people checking in online, recording their hours, being able to be, hey, I logged in, I clocked in at this time, I clocked out at that time, depending upon if you're doing kind of some type of an hourly bill rate, or asking your technicians to record things like expenses. Insperity helps with all of that sort of look and feel, and it gives you that access to the talent pool and helps your employees from a benefits perspective. All of that fun stuff is really readily available. Their portal's easy to use, and you can really take advantage of a lot of the different services. It'll make you feel bigger, and your employees will like the onboarding process as well when it comes to managing benefits and being able to compete. So I'll turn it over back to you, Michael, and let you jump in. But when it comes to the things that matter most, talent, well-being to us, Insperity helps us with that quite a bit.
Thanks, Brian. So what are we doing now that works, and what will we need to change as we prepare to meet the possibilities of the future? Well, some of the trends that we do see happening at this juncture: digitization and the rise of automation is big. The shifting of the demographics, especially when we look at the makeup of the workforce, and it's disrupting the way we work and the companies we relate to, and even the workers, and vice versa. The pace of change that's happening right now, it's making it difficult for us to plan long term, but we have to be giving some thought to that. Some of the best ways that we can do that is we need to think, when we look forward, and begin to think about the possibilities of what could be out there, and then work our way back to where we are today. So one of the things that we look at here when we move forward and see it, one of the biggest things that comes out of it is there's a skills gap out there that McKinsey Business has identified. It was done through a survey of over 1,200 people, and 65% of the respondents stated that there's going to be skill gaps in the next 2 years. Some of the subject matter experts that have looked at that feel those numbers have already accelerated, and it's beyond that at this point. So that's something that we have to be concerned about as well when we're moving forward. So a couple of things that we want to look at. The balance of power is definitely shifting when we look at the generational makeup of the workforce. It's estimated by that 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. And if we add the younger portion of the Gen X and then the Gen Z to it, they're going to make up about 85% of the workforce. And this is a connected generation. They're coming in with talent that people who've been in the workforce for a while don't necessarily have, but are willing to learn. And they know that their talents are needed. While there are more similarities than differences among these generations, there are a few influences that we want to keep in mind when we look at the differences, specifically with the parenting. The millennials definitely had more involved parents than some of the previous generations. And they have examples in individuals like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, who they weren't patient. They really want to move forward and make things happen. They're used to blowing things up, and they're used to getting the guidance from their parents of don't do things like I did. Really look at it from a different perspective, which is why sometimes the millennial generation is referred to as the Y generation, Generation Y, because they're looking to do that. They think from a different perspective. Just look at it from the music level. They're more into iTunes than going out and purchasing an entire album. Some other things to keep in mind is that they're very much into a sharing economy. It's very much about collaborative consumption and peer-to-peer exchange. They're more open to sharing and solving problems than they are concerned about intellectual property. We also see the makeup of the workforce is a little bit different. They are freelancers in some respect. They can be very comfortable with the gig economy. So you may have individuals working for you, but they may also have a job on the outside too as an Uber driver. And in some instances, people don't even enter the workforce. They have a couple of 2 or 3 side jobs and they make ends meet that way. What we see is that employees want to be heard and feel that their work is aligned not only with the organizational mission statement, but also with their own personal mission statement. In fact, there are some organizations, when they go through the recruiting and hiring process, are having individuals write their personal mission statement as part of that. So, Brian, I'd stop there and see if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so just kind of a good, I think an interesting perspective, which is our perspective. So we sit down, and when we look at the talent that's coming in the door, we don't necessarily pay attention too much to the generational aspect as far as how we should, I want to call it, treat them. What we do instead is we look at how we can leverage the generational aspect to help us grow our business. So as Michael mentioned, these guys seem to be more well connected. So when it comes to a remote workforce, they're used to, and if you think about this, right, they're on FaceTime all the time. They're used to being on Teams, they're used to being on Zoom. They're used to doing a lot of digital collaboration. The days of sort of the face-to-face interaction in the boardroom has gone away. They used, my generation, I'm a Gen X guy. We would come home, your parents would kick you out and say, hey, come back home when the streetlights are on. Dinner's going to be at this time. The latchkey kid, so to speak. At the same time, these guys come in the door, and when they come home, they're jumping on usually virtual platforms like Xbox, PlayStation. They're doing anything with any kind of online gaming, and all of that collaboration and teaming together has helped them to develop a skill early on that really doesn't drive the office. Why do you care where somebody works today as long as they're productive? And when it comes to measuring employees and getting their engagement, the way that we look at it is we look at the people and say, what matters to you the most? Is it a flexible work schedule? Is it the ability to be able to spend, let's say 9 months out of the year in Pennsylvania, and then, hey, I want to go spend the summer in Colorado. I'm going to go hang out with my buddies in Colorado. I'm going to go hike, and I'm going to go out, do a bunch of outdoor stuff. Can I work the East Coast hours from the West Coast? And the answer is, as long as you're productive, as long as they're able to measure you effectively, and as long as they're able to pay you, you can do those kind of things, right? There are a lot of stuff that comes up related to compliance that they take on. So, maybe the state of Colorado would like to have a little taste of that particular wage, but at the same time, it is just a vacation. It's a temporary arrangement, and they're able to come back. We have people right now that are getting ready to jump off and maybe go work from Spain for a month. Giving them the ability to do that, it helps broaden not only their skill set, the culture that they get from it, but also we're allowing them, in this particular individual's case, to be able to take leads from Europe at the exact same time they're actually working from Spain. And then when they come back, again, they're going to be collaborating digitally. They're going to be working and functioning in an very interactive environment with their boss and with their other teammates, using tools like Slack and Teams. Microsoft Teams allows you to collaborate and pull all those things together. These guys read fast. They read a lot when it comes to digital content, right? It's like things like a wiki, being able to have rules of engagement readily available. They ask the right questions. They know what matters and they're dedicated. And when you have an employee that works like that and you can engage them in a way where they can do a little work-life balance or work-life integration, it really, really, really works well, especially when they're serving your customers. A happy employee creates a happy customer. A happy employee creates, a really good engaging experience when it comes to sales. And like I said, being able to leverage them anywhere they are in the United States, giving them that flexibility and it works out really well for us.
Thanks, Brian. And I think the next slide kind of sums up a lot of what you just said. What we're finding where we look at the commonalities across generations is we all want to contribute. We want to make a difference and be valued. There are a number of things that people expect at work. Everyone wants leaders who are trustworthy. Change is still going to create discomfort, but it's helping people get more comfortable with that change. And that's one of the things that a lot of organizations are working on and actually spending time with learning and performance to make that easier for people. We all want feedback and we want respect. And what we're also seeing is across the generations, people do want to learn. So those learning environments have really been critical and helpful in attracting talent as we go on. So when we look at it, there are a couple of things that we've identified that should really be taken into consideration as we go through them. So there's 9 different things that we want to touch on real briefly here. First one is the non-hierarchical work environment. So from this perspective, when we talk about it, think about it from a compensation setup. Promotion pay, it's not based on title. It's more about productivity and value to the organization. Everything is level set. And millennials are expecting to have some say in what's going on in decisions. Growth and innovation doesn't necessarily come from the people with the highest job titles on the organizational chart, from people who develop new ideas and execute them on a daily basis. And it's really important that we keep this in mind. That's why we see more and more that these traditional hierarchies are moving away, and we're looking at different recognition and reward systems. A lot of bonus scorecards, a lot of people talking about how incentive plans are really contributing to the success of an organization. So when we go through that, sometimes we hear people say that the younger generations, all they want to do is move up and be CEOs in the next 6 months. But what's really happening is they just want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and they want to be recognized for what they're bringing to the work environment. And their contributions, they want them to be reflected in what they're being paid in a compensation perspective. So another thing that's happening that we really need to pay attention to is trust and transparency. And we see a lot of this happening in terms of dashboards and performance charts. We've got a lot of focus on objectives and key results, especially when we're looking from a performance management perspective. There is somewhat of a trend now towards transparency in business. There's a company called Aptopia, which is based in Boston, and it has a bank of monitors that are visible to all employees. And those monitors are constantly showing what the revenues are, how their client numbers are doing, where there's any customer churn. I actually had a client of mine who did something similar to that in a manufacturing environment because they really wanted to capture for everybody to let them know where they were performing against goals for the month, how their deliveries were happening, what the shrinkage was. All that stuff is now being put up front so people can see and know on a real-time basis what's happening to the success of the organization. There was a survey that was done not too long ago that said 25% of privately held companies are starting to share financial information with all their employees. And that was up from a period of only a couple of years prior to that, from 7%. Two things with that, obviously, we want to be cautious about. Transparency is a means, but it's not an end. The goal of any business should be to better its performance and to improve the lives of its employees. But better performance means that the company is delivering more values to their customers and clients than before. At the same time, it's improving the lives of employees in terms of the way they're rewarding people who deliver on the results. Where it can become a challenge is if too much information is shared, because people are going to feel like they're overwhelmed. And in some instances, some of the information that's being shared may create some issues within the work environment. There have been instances where some companies have decided to share compensation, and that doesn't always go over very well. So I'll stop there and let you.
One thing I can actually add. Sometimes it's actually, when you share information, right, it doesn't always necessarily have to be financial. If everybody wants to run towards a goal, if you have a sales team, let's say you're an MSP that's just hiring his first couple sales reps and you want to have healthy competition. So in that instance, you might share something along the lines of progress to goal, right? To be able to create a very simple, healthy competition. And what you might want to do in order to engage the support team is share the number of net new customers that have open tickets that have closed. So your sales team engages a prospect, they work with them, that prospect decides, and I know in the MSP world it's a little different, but that prospect decides to call, and just check in to see if they have support before they buy. Maybe they're working through a service with you, maybe they had a backup sale, they just want to see what may have gone south, or maybe they had an alert and they're concerned. So they decide to call in a little bit of an after hours, and that support engineer answers the phone and says, "Hey, how's it going? I'm here to help you." So looking at number of customers that have actually contacted, or I should say prospects that contacted customers and closed, is one. Another one might be just to share the number of net new clients we want to, or number of net new endpoints we want to onboard. So we share a lot at MSP 360 how many new customers we bring in on a quarterly basis. For those of you on the call, it's around 400 to 500, somewhere in that range, depending upon the current quarter. But we share that with our support team, we share that with our sales team, we share that with our R&D teams and our product management teams. And we're able to build a lot of camaraderie and a lot of momentum around, hey, we're continuing to expand and more people are using our products and services and solutions. So if you can think about and ask some of your sales teams and or support teams, depending on how big they are, what matters most to them, that could be one. And then the other one, which may seem like you might be giving up a little bit, is to give a little bit of a bonus at the end of the year based on company performance. If we grow to X amount, if we grow by 25%, then I'll give you a $5,000 Christmas bonus at the end of the year. There's a lot of momentum that gets built around people saying, hey, I have a short-term goal, which is my monthly or quarterly, and a long-term goal, which is to see the company grow. That way, everybody's on the same team and everybody's working forward and able to, really kind of work towards that bonus. And we have something like that for some of our team members. There's a true false at the end. So in other words, we either hit the number or we didn't. And if we hit the number, then there's some upside benefit to that. We call them MBOs. So our management is by objectives. So everybody has those individual KPIs and they're able to work together and get something for doing what they need to do, it both individually and as a team. So hopefully those kinds of things that you can share help maybe kind of alleviate around, sharing revenue numbers specifically if you're not comfortable doing that, and you can work in kind of these other metrics to see how they help the business go faster.
Yes, and along those lines, that's one thing. We have a compensation center of excellence, and we have a number of our clients working with them where they'll go through a process and they'll prioritize some of the things that are most important in their compensation structure, and we'll help them build a compensation program around that as well. The other side of this is trust, and trust is often spoken about as one of the most significant contributors to the organization's success. And when we find employees trust their organizations, they see them as fair, dependable, and competent. There was a survey that gets done annually. This year it was the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer survey, and it encompassed 33,000 people from about 28 countries. And the results showed that only one in three people don't trust their employer. So that's something that we have to keep in mind out there. The Society for Human Resource Management research shows that where there is more trust in the workplace, employees are 23% more likely to offer ideas and solutions. And PricewaterhouseCoopers, which has done a CEO survey globally, reported that 55% of CEOs think that a lack of trust is a threat to their organization's growth. So when we talk about this, what do we do to correct this? Well, one of the things that we can do is follow through on our promises. That's one of the biggest things to help people connect and be honest, especially when we look across the generations. That's something that all generations are looking for. The other thing is to get to know your team. The more time we spend with our team, the better we're going to build that trust. And now, as people are working remotely across the country, we have to take into account that, especially people in different time zones, that we're treating them and giving them as much time in front of them as we are the people who may be in front of us physically. That's important, and it's one of the critical things that they look for. The vulnerability piece is also big as well, in terms of admitting our mistakes and admitting our lack of knowledge and experience, because that ties into some of the other things we're going to talk about as we move forward. But those are some things to take in consideration when you're looking to build trust within an organization. So talk a little bit about collaboration, but I have another polling question for the group. This one is, what is the best online collaboration tool for chatting in your organization? So we've got a couple of choices up there: Microsoft Teams, Skype, Slack. And then if you have another one that you use, feel free to enter that. So let's see Slack, let's see Skype. Microsoft Teams. Okay. Give another minute there. So actually, in a survey that was done by DevEcho, which was for 47,000 people across 183 countries, Slack seemed to be the most popular at this juncture, followed by Microsoft Teams and Skype and WhatsApp. So and it's actually, Anthony's actually using WhatsApp as his organization, or Natalia's. So thanks for participating in that. So highly collaborative teams. So one of the things that we want to keep in mind here is as more and more businesses offer telecommuting and remote working options, the need for workplace collaboration tools is only going to increase. What we can see is a couple of things. Top performing workers spend about 45% of their time on the job working individually, 45% of their time on the job working collaboratively, and 10% on the job learning and socializing. And when we look at it from a global perspective, 39% of surveyed employees feel that their peers don't collaborate enough. And the same survey found that only 27% of the people are confident in communicating at their work. So the collaboration piece, and what we talked about earlier, some of the skills gaps that we see going on, this ties back into it. When we look at it from an emotional intelligence perspective, from increasing communication skills and conflict management, things that seem to come up a lot of times when employee relations issues end up in front of me or my colleagues. It's not really the technical skills that are getting in the way, it's stuff that falls into those spaces. So we have to keep that in mind as well. A couple of other things here. 50% of employers use online collaboration tools and social media to communicate with employees. So it is something that's on the rise. And one of the things that the biggest concerns from a leadership perspective is 86% of employees in leadership roles blame lack of collaborations as the top reason for workplace failures. So we have to keep this in mind. I actually had a client when the pandemic started. They were an investment banking industry company, and they switched to Microsoft Teams. And they stated that the effectiveness and the efficiency of the organization improved. And actually to the point where as they looked at their bigger picture of the organization, and they were based in New York, they decided to make some changes. They had a large space in New York. They downsized that, and actually 2 people in the C-suite relocated to Florida. And they said that the ability to collaborate and speak more effectively and efficiently has actually risen than when they were working in New York. So we want to keep that in mind with our own organizations. And as you're looking for people to bring on, when you're interviewing, hiring, make sure that they have that collaborative mentality. So
one of the things I can add,
Sure.
sorry, Mike, one of the things that I can add is, for those of you that are using Slack or using Teams, there are tools out there that actually help with better collaboration to interface with your chat. So using tools like Slicky Wiki, or inside Teams, it's just called Wiki. What it does, it allows you to create policies, answers, guidebooks, all of the fun stuff, and be able to collaborate through together. So what happens is, for example, let's say I have a new employee coming on board. They come in the door, they sign into Slack. The very first thing they do is inside Slack, they go to the HR channel, and it says, hey, this HR channel has a wiki page, and you click open. And when it pops open, it takes you to the company's wiki page. And inside there might be like, hey, here's a link to our handbook. Here's the holidays that we have off. If you are working on things like development and requirements, or working with a customer, and when a customer comes in the door, there's a new customer onboarding document. You can create a Slack channel for that customer, and you can share it. And inside that wiki, again, you can have things like how to create a ticket with IT, how to reach us after hours, these sort of standard operating procedures that people are able to use, and they don't have to remember or print out and do all these things. And so what happens, right, is if I'm a new customer of yours, and I use Slack, and there's a Slack channel for me called My MSP, and I go to that My MSP and I just type something, whatever the keyword is, wiki, Slicky, whatever it might be, and you click OK, and it comes up and it says, hey, if I need to contact Brian after hours, I use the cell phone. Or if I need to create a ticket, I go here. Or if I need to reset my password, I click on this link, and it will take me to the right information. And those are other tools that you can leverage with inside Slack that help with collaboration, answering customers questions faster, getting in front of HR-related questions, as well as employee-related relationship issues that you can get a hold of and be able to jump right in. So I recommend using a tool with inside, not necessarily a separate one. They don't usually cost very much. More often than not, they're about $1 or so a user, $2 a user, something in that range. And they do allow you to collaborate more effectively as you need.
Thanks, Brian. So constant feedback, a couple of things here that we want to just talk about. It's important to every generation, but the need for constant feedback is often associated with Gen Z and the millennials. And there's 3 areas that we think about when we look at it here. First, from a culture perspective, many members of the millennial generation grew up with a lot more adult support than the previous generations. And it wasn't just from parents and teachers. They often had coaches, they had college academic advisors, career advisors, and tutors. They were basically had somebody had access to them for 24/7. And the mentorship role is very important to them. I actually was on an event last week in New Jersey for the Society for Human Resource Management. It was a partnership that we did with them with our state council. We were hoping to get maybe 20, what we would refer to as emerging professionals or college students to join, and maybe 10 mentors, people who were a little bit further in the career, in a mentor-mentee session. We ended up having over 70 participants that evening, and it was a great ratio. It's a 2-to-1 ratio of mentees to mentors. And it really reinforced what we're seeing in terms of the data, that is such a critical aspect of communication for them, and the ability to get constant feedback and to learn and grow. From a technology perspective, millennials really are used to pressing a button for instant results. They're out there on the internet, they're out there on Instagram, all these different things. As Brian mentioned earlier, video games is really important with this generation, and they look to use it for instant gratification. They like the gamification piece in the work environment, and using that as well. And then school, it's the same thing. They entered the workforce after a lifetime of school where they were constantly getting feedback in terms of what they were performing in the classroom. They want that same feedback on a day-to-day basis within the organization. So when you're looking at your organization, we find this group, 35% of them want to receive feedback more than once a day. And that can be challenging for some people. So we have to figure out different ways to do it. Some of this feedback doesn't necessarily mean to be a sit down. It could be something just quickly responding to somebody in a Slack channel or instant messaging. I saw the other day, so I was doing something with my supervisor, and afterwards he forgot something. I got a quick message on my phone saying, hey, I just wanted to remind you about something where I had received some feedback that I wanted to share with you. So figuring out ways to have that feedback in front of them on a regular basis is going to be important and help keep them connected. And when you look at your culture and you start talking about what it's like to explain to come and work in your environment, ask questions about that to better understand what type of feedback they're looking for when you're bringing them into the company. Okay, so this is more of an open-ended question, our last survey question of the day. What best practices is your company using to attract and retain talent right now? What are some things that you're doing that you've found to be successful that have helped give you a competitive advantage in that space to bring in, to attract and retain talent? So take a moment, just open-ended, write something in there to chat to share with the rest of the group. That would be great.
Anybody using anything like Indeed or ZipRecruiter or any type of recruiting platform to try to get a hold of? Are you just using referrals? How do you find more people if you need them? Indeed, there's always like Indeed you do, right? I always feel like Indeed, I need somebody else to keep reading all of the different submissions that keep coming in.
Yeah, so we've got Indeed, ZipRecruiter. Some folks are using both Indeed. Profit sharing has been shared as a response. Good, thank you. Thanks for sharing. So let's talk a little bit about this in terms of a best practice perspective and what we see going on here. There's a number of things that are happening in this area. And what we are seeing is there's more of an emphasis on physical health programs. So organizations are very conscious of what's happened in the past years or two, and they want to make sure that people understand that they're being heard. So physical health perspective, where people used to have the ability to maybe get gym memberships, because so many people are now involved in stuff where they can do workouts from home, whether they are have bought home exercise equipment, or they've got one of those bikes where you can kind of zoom in and be part of a group. They're now giving people part of their benefit package the opportunity to take advantage of that. Mental health programs, 44% of employers are investing in these programs. And what this might look at is mental health apps, consistently promoting the employee assistance program through an organization. And there's a lot of benefits with that, because a lot of these programs offer lunch and learns where people can come and do a program on stress, work-life balance. Caregiving is very big now too, especially those people who we refer to are in the sandwich generation, who are not only taking care of their own children, but are also taking care of their grandparents or their elderly parents. Those are some of the things in the mental health space that we see going on. Employee engagement efforts. We really have to look at this, especially since a lot of people still are working remotely or spread out across the country. A lot of virtual social events happening. You might see end of the day happy hour, or there's also more employee-led education programs. We are seeing people who are leading things where they're coming back and doing teach backs. So if they attend a webinar or if they're back out attending conferences, they'll come and do that. Book clubs, where a group of people will get together to read a book and share that. That's another thing. The other aspect, when we were talking about social government, is emphasis on volunteering. A lot of people now with this work-life balance who are not commuting have the time to go out into the community and participate and give back. And organizations are recognizing that as part of their social initiatives because they realize that's another way that they're able to connect with the Gen Zs and the millennials. Child care assistance is also coming up, as is flexible scheduling. And believe it or not, pet insurance. As the pandemic began, a lot of people did go out and get a pet. And now there are a lot of people who are actually asking for that when we do onboarding programs for our clients. That's one of the things that comes up. One other aspect, which is pretty hot these days, is financial wellness programs, helping people better manage their money, especially people coming out of the workforce, coming into the workforce off of college, university. Those people need help with it. There's a program out there, it's an emergency savings plan that's gaining traction. And it's something that's actually Susie Orman is a part of, where it's similar to a flex spending account, but it can be done as a post-tax deduction and people can put money into it just for emergency situations. Perhaps that they have a tire that blows out and they have to replace it unexpectedly and they don't have the money. Companies are sometimes matching it. So if somebody puts in $20, a company may match a couple of dollars towards it. So we're, instead of it's sitting in a savings account, not getting anything, the money now is in one of these emergency savings plans and they're getting some money there too. They don't have to wait like if they were in a 401k plan till they're 55 to take it out. It's portable and they can leave. And the results that we're seeing is that people are actually taking it serious. They're not building the money up and then saying, oh, I'm going out to a wedding this weekend, I'm going to buy a new outfit. So that's another thing. And then finally, personalized options, benefit options. But the key piece with all these best practices is to continually keep an eye on your compensation strategies to make sure what you're paying is competitive in your market space and that it reflects your organization. And then personal development. This is another area that's really hot. We really are seeing individuals want to give the opportunity to grow their skill sets. Certification programs are becoming very big in multiple fields, whether it's in HR or whether it's in technology. A lot of individuals want that opportunity to be able to give back and continue to grow their skill sets. Coaching is really hot. We see that within organizations. A lot of people are being lined up with professional coaches, but organizations have even gone out of the way to create their own coaching program where they're training people to become better coaches so that they can do that across the organization. Keith Ferrazzi wrote a book, Leading Without Authority, discusses this as a culture of co-elevation where everybody has the opportunity to coach each other. And then obviously diversity is really important these days, and we want to stay on top of that. One of the things that Johnny Taylor, who is the CEO for SHRM, said is, as CEO, he's often asking himself, what is it that my organization is centered on? Is it constantly coming back to our key principles? And what does that look like in terms of the people we have in our organization? And it goes beyond the traditional definition where we look at it from race, ethnicity, religion, and gender and sexual orientation. Diversity and inclusivity in this place also means age and abilities, looking at what people can do who are somewhat disabled, veteran status, and even people with criminal histories and helping them get back into the work environment. There's more of an emphasis placed on that these days as well. In an organization like Zappos, there's actually two pieces to your interview when you come. First is there's a business skill interview, and then there's a cultural alignment interview. And there's a number of organizations that are taking time out to do that as well, to make sure that people understand the value of it. And there is a return on investment for this. Diverse organizations are 35% more likely to have better returns than homogenous organizations. Okay, we've spoken a lot about remote work and flexible working arrangements. We want to keep this in mind as well as we're going forward too. Some key remote work statistics to keep in mind is really right now only 16% of companies in the world are 100% remote. 44% of companies don't even allow remote work. And the average annual income of remote workers is about $4,000 higher than those of other workers. The three biggest challenges that organizations, especially HR people, have to keep in mind with this is that 22% of people are concerned about unplugging after work. Loneliness has a tendency to play itself in too, which is so critical to have that collaboration piece. And communication. Communication is another concern. So those are three things we want to keep in mind with there as well. Okay, and then the last thing I just want to talk about is innovation and agility. This is really another area where we see a lot of things going on, and we want to keep in mind. Organizational agility is these obstacles that come up to improve business responsiveness that often slow things down. We really have to get on top of that so organizations avoid becoming risk-averse cultures and they're more functional teams across the organization. A study by McKinsey and Company found that 94% of managers are unhappy with their company's innovation performance, and they're always looking to improve and grow on that as too. The cross-functional team, where people get exposed to different aspects of the organization so they understand what's happening there, helps to build trust, and we want to keep that in mind too. The cons speak for itself. We want to just really make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we're losing our folks because they're not involved in the decision making or things we're missing opportunities as a business. So that's kind of a summary of what we're doing. I think in closing, what we want to think about, some questions to ask ourselves when we look forward to where we're going. What will our workers and our HR function need from the organization to be successful? How do you match up with where you are right now compared to where you have to be? How can you attract the people you need today? And how does your organization need to change from today? And what will that look like so that your organization maintains a competitive advantage in the niche that they're in? So I'll stop it there. Don't know if there's any questions. Open up the floor, or Brian, if you have anything that you'd like to add.
No, a great session. I mean, what do you guys, any questions at all? Anybody thinking about how they might be able to take something from today's webinar and be able to source talent, or maybe did it make you think a little differently about employee engagement or how to recruit, or where talent might be, maybe given that second thought to that 20-something that wants to jump on a plane and go work from Colorado for a few weeks?
Yeah. I'm going to jump in here for a second as well and just say we do have to give away the Sonos Play 5 here. But before we do that, some interesting things that I sort of heard you say, Michael, is, pet insurance. I never even knew that was a thing that companies are doing now for their employees. That's kind of interesting. And this sort of concept of a cultural fit, right? If you think about a company like Patagonia, when it snows, everybody goes snowboarding. And, when it's super sunny, everybody goes surfing. So that, talking about a cultural fit, that might not be for you, right? So really interesting information there. I don't see any questions coming in, so I think we'll just, oh, here's one from Taylor. Let's see.
Yeah, so it says, do you see remote work being offered in manufacturing as well? Of course, shop floor employees cannot work remotely, but the office employees may have some flexibility. Yeah, actually, I have a client that their unique space. They make wedding, they make dresses for the mothers of brides and evening cocktail wear, and they actually have grown since the pandemic. That industry somewhat shrunk, but it's at the point now where they're doing really well. And to your point, people who are in non-manufacturing positions are actually working from home. I talk with the HR VP quite frequently, and where she used to regularly make a trip in from Connecticut to New York, now she's only going to start going back once or twice a week, probably in a month or so. So she's been remote for quite some period of time, and the organization's been able to work successfully in that regard. So during the pandemic, they were actually taking patterns, and until they got themselves settled, they would be taking pieces of it and to put it all together, they'd be sending it via FedEx from one worker to another until they got themselves set up so that they could be back in person.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Tim. Oh, sorry.
No, no worries.
Michael, I mentioned your last name there. Okay, so we're gonna go give away the Sonos. Oh, one more question, Michael.
Yeah, so this one says small family IT company, just 2 employees, new hire, left after 5 months. What did we do wrong? Yeah, I think those are great opportunities to go and reflect, and if you can, do an exit survey with those individuals and see what type of feedback they have. And I think if you come from a place of vulnerability, asking what it was that was missing or what we can learn, because we care enough about your time here, but we don't want to have the same challenges moving forward. That's a great thing too. And also, you're probably small, but if you have a Glassdoor page or an Indeed page, take a look out there in case they post some information out there too. That might be helpful.
Thanks for that, Michael. Okay, so we're going to give away the Play 5 if nobody else has any other questions. I do not have a drum roll machine, so I'm just going to use my hands to make this drum roll sound. The winner of the Play 5 is Eric Griever. I hope I got your last name correct. Eric will be in touch with you today to let us know where you want us to send the Play 5. So congratulations on winning that. And Michael and Brian, thank you so much for being our guest today. That was an awesome presentation. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, please reach out to us. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.